Straight talk. Dave Dixon on CFAX 1070.
Good afternoon. I'm Liz McArthur. In for Dave Dixon today. Dave will be back at 3 o'clock. We're going to talk now with Nicole Strong and Hollie Davis. They are parents and members of FAIR, which is Fighting Autism Intervention Reduction. As many of our listeners recall, I believe in January, the Queen Alexandra Foundation's early intervention therapy program was shut down due to funding restrictions. And now there's a group of parents that have children with autism that were in this program and were benefiting from the early intervention program. We're looking for an update now to see how things have been going for parents who had their children in this program and what's happening next. So welcome, Nicole, and welcome, Hollie.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How has it been in the months since the end to the early intervention program? Has there been anything to fill the gap for parents like you who have children with autism?
Well, at the tail end, when we realized that the fight to save QA's program had been lost, we scrambled to find private therapies. So our children had to transition into that. So we all found something, but the number of hours that we had in comparison to the program at QA is a third of the hours. So it's not filling the gaps by any means, but it's there. It's all that's available to us now. So, yeah.
So you're looking at a smaller amount of actual therapy hours for your children.
Yeah.
And is there a cost difference?
Absolutely. Hollie can probably speak to that really well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's two ways to look at a cost difference. There's a cost difference insofar as what it costs to give a child adequate therapy, which usually runs from $60,000 to $70,000 a year, and that's what was being supplied by the Queen Alexandra Center. We now get annual funding of $22,000 per year, and that's expected to cover the therapy and if a child needs a speech pathologist or an occupational therapist or, anything along those lines, behavioral consultants, it's all expected to be covered with this $22,000 a year. So we went from having the adequate number of hours, which science has indicated is 25 hours a week at minimum, and most of us are pretty lucky if we're getting 10. And at a cost of, out of the, all of us are having to come up with personal money to supplement, to try and get even close to the hours, and we're not succeeding. We might be able to get an extra 5 hours a week, maybe, if we're lucky. And, people like myself, my husband is out every weekend trying to do cash jobs wherever he can get them so that we can pay for our son's therapy. We're talking about $31 an hour just for intervention therapists.
Right.
You're over $100 an hour easily with consultants of any kind.
How many hours were you looking at, I guess, a week with the Queen Alexandra program?
Oh, we were getting at least 20 hours a week.
And now with the funding that you have, what are you looking at?
9 to 11.
So that's a significant reduction. Have you seen, is this impacting your kids? It must be.
We've still been in touch with a lot of our families on a weekly basis, and there has been universally regression with all the kids, no matter where they were at on the spectrum. Anywhere from children who are just beginning to speak, no longer speaking, toileting regression, so children are entering kindergarten, no longer toileted, they're going in pull-ups. Major behavior problems with so many of our kids, to the point where preschools and daycares who are unequipped to deal with the severity of the behaviors that can happen for our children when they're dealing with a number of transitions, we've been asked to not bring our kids because they don't have the type of supports available to help our kids in those situations. Marriages are falling apart across the board. Major isolation for our families, which is a huge concern of mine in particular, because we're sort of forced back into our home for private therapy, and there are very few centers that offer a center-based therapy. So you have no contact daily with other families who are going through what you're going through, and you just feel more and more alone, and of course comes depression, and those things come along with that as well. So it's just been a horrific experience for all of our families and our kids. we're just trying to put back the pieces together as best we can with the so few supports we have now in place.
So now going forward, what is your group going to do? Do you have a plan to sort of address these challenges that you are dealing with?
Yeah, we've been on. This has been ongoing actually since the announcement last September to the actual closure of QA. We, as a parent group, have did the best we could to advocate for our kids through. We had 3 different rallies. We had several meetings with the MCFD. The latest one was this past March with Minister Polak, and just to inform her directly of all of the consequences of this decision. And even within that meeting, Minister Polak agreed that 25 hours a week and more for these kids is what they need for therapy, but the government simply will not pay for it, and that's right from her mouth. And so, we're just continuing to write letters to editors, keep in touch with our MLAs, and just stay connected as much as we can as a group to keep advocating and giving our children's voice loud and clear to the public to help them understand, because this is going to have a major impact on taxpayers in the future, because our children are going to be highly dependent on the system, and it's needless, because if these therapies were in place and the proper amount of hours and supports were given to children, then they wouldn't be so reliant on the system, and they'd be able to be contributing members of society. And, I'm not so hopeful that that's going to happen until we can get these decisions reversed.
Mm-hmm. And as you're saying, it's not just these kids that are suffering from the rollback of the program. There's parents and families who are feeling isolated and depressed. So this is also compounding the social cost. It's not just individual children now. It's multiple members of families and things like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it's staggering. It's staggering. I hear news stories every week of something that's going terrible among one family or another, and we're just trying to survive day by day and do the best we can in supporting each other.
Are there supports available for the families and parents who are dealing with this right now?
Recently, most of the supports we were getting, such as respite services or anything to that effect, have seen some pretty major cuts. A lot of that money comes from gaming grants, and of course we all know what happened with those. Pretty much we're on our own, and it's tough. It doesn't sound like a big number when you say it population-wise, but I would suggest that this government is pretty much responsible for the possible dissolution of up to 70 families. And it's a scary thing. Like Nicole stated, we're watching marriages blow apart. Families are being separated. It's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of pressure on the entire population of kids with autism. When you're looking at the 70 families affected by the QA, you think all those other families out there that didn't get the opportunity to use the QA services are feeling the same pressure. The government really needs to step up and not only take care of the kids that they let down, but all the rest of the kids in the province.
So basically, it's not just about, not just the children that have now no longer have that Queen Alexandra program, but everyone else who didn't have access to that. Are you calling, I guess, for some sort of universal province-wide autism therapy program?
Well, or, not necessarily a province-wide thing. There could be different centers in different regions, but it has to be, what the government's done is brought us all down to the lowest common denominator, as opposed to bring us all up to what would be adequate funding to the children, right? Mm-hmm. When we were at the Queen Alexandra Centre, that was adequate for 70 families. What about the other 800 families? That should be given to all of those families so that these children are taken care of before they turn 6, which is apparently the magic number of when they're able to take advantage of the therapies. And, I'm just flabbergasted, I'm sorry. But, when you get, all of these kids need to be taken care of. It's going to cost billions in the future. And it's interesting because we did give some studies to Minister Polak personally and reviewed them with her personally, where there's some states and some areas that have implemented what we're asking for, which is to give the adequate amount of funding to every child with autism, and they're saving money. Like the one, Minnesota has already saved $1 billion. We're looking at billions of dollars of future tax-paying costs, and she acknowledged all of it. She agreed with all of it, and then basically told us that she didn't feel that it was appropriate for the government to be paying that.
Wow. We're gonna take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to continue talking with Nicole Strong and Hollie Davis. They're members of the Fighting Autism Intervention Reduction Group in Victoria. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.
I'm Murray Langdon. Coming up